Hello everyone, I am Seema Saharan, currently working as DevOps Administrator at IBM. And in this talk, I will discuss about GitOps using GitHub Actions. So the first thing that comes into your mind is what exactly is GitOps? So we have already DevOps and we were fine with that approach, but there is a new term for the past 4 to 5 years in industry, that is GitOps. So, what is GitHub? So, to put it in simple terms, it's operations by pull request. So, through GitOps, you don't have to worry about your deployment that much, and you can focus on building your application and testing that. Next question is, why should you care about GitOps? So the first thing about GitOps is it uses Git as the single source of truth. So you will have your version control history and you can do team collaboration. If you have your whole history of your commits, so if you ever blow up your production, you can easily switch back to the last stable version. Also, if you have different environments for your application like dev, test, and production, you can use multiple branches to enable that. Let's suppose your environment is dev, you can make a branch that is dev, and another one is test and prod, and so on. Next is it saves maintainer time and efforts. You can make your pipelines automated so that even in early stages of your pull request, it can detect whether this pull request is correct or not, if it's gonna be problem for the production environment or not. So when you make a pull request, it will detect your errors and it will save the maintainer's time, and the maintainer will tell you that yes, you need to make this pull request correct and you can push it again. Next, the main thing about GitOps is your production code won't blow up. Why? Because the version control history will always be there, because since we are using Git, and through that, let's suppose developer is making a large pull request and it's not correct, and in early stages it can detect the errors. That's how you can prevent in early stages. But there is another case, if the developer and the maintainer has approved the changes of the pull request and it goes into the production environment, then what it will do is it can bring the whole production environment down. But there is a catch, since we are using Git as a single source of truth in GitOps, so you can just switch back to the last stable version, and yeah, your production environment will be saved. So now let's see all this thing in action. So I have already made a repository on my GitHub, that is GHU, and I'll tell you the architecture I am using for this application. It's a really small Flask application that I will be deploying to Docker Hub. So first is my app.py. It's just a simple Flask application that it has 3 functions, and that is hello. By default it will display me hello, and if we go to /welcome page, it will say hi, how are you, and if you go to /error, it will just display me 404. That's a really basic Flask application. And I have a requirements.txt file which uses 1.0.0 Flask version, and readme and license are common for every repository. So the next main thing is the Docker file. So I'm using Python 3.8 version, and I'll be copying the requirements file to Flask app /requirements.txt, and I'll just install this Flask application into my Docker container. Now, the main thing that we were discussing about GitOps is here, the YAML files. So the my main YAML file is this one. So when it will run is whenever a developer is making a pull request, so it will run after making the pull request. Okay, and to save your production environment, it's taking a few steps to do that. It will check your Docker file. If it's using some wrong code or wrong image name, it can't detect, or whatever is it doesn't have on Docker Hub, so it will detect everything on that. And that's how you can detect the errors in early stages in just your CI pipeline. But if everything is okay, and your pull request is like approved and the CI pipeline is working fine, so after that, after the maintainer checks your pull request and it says yeah, it's working fine and it doesn't create any issues for the production environment, so he will merge those changes, obviously. Next, after merging, what it is doing, it is deploying that application to Docker Hub. You can use either Kubernetes if you are having a large application, and you can also use cloud platform like GCP. I love using GCP and AWS and Azure. So after merging, it will run this YAML file and it will just deploy your application to Docker Hub. So let's see in practical. So what I will do is, first I will make some error into my Docker file that doesn't exist. Like, we know Python is a image on Docker Hub. So let's say it's like doesn't work. It won't be there, obviously, we know that, but if the pipeline detects it or not, that's the question. So we will just add our changes and we will just commit added wrong image that can break your production environment. Okay, and I'll just push these changes to my test branch, and after that I will just create a pull request. Now I'll just click on create pull request, and now you see that, yeah, so the CI pipeline has started and you can check the details whatever it's running. And it should fail because we don't have any Python doesn't work like image on Docker Hub. So yeah, it failed as expected. What if I haven't added this try to deploy, try to build Flask app? If it wasn't there, so it will just approve this pull request and maintainer will, maybe he will just ignore those changes and just merge. So that can be an issue, but that can be detected in the CD pipeline. Now it's failed, so what we can do is we can just go back to our Docker file and we can just say from Python 3.8, and we'll just do git add and again git commit. This will work, and then again push to test branch so that I can create a pull request. So you understand that GitOps is all about operating through pull requests. It's already running here. Now the Docker file is correct, and now we can see that it's trying to build the Flask application at early stages, that is CI pipeline. And yeah, as expected, it's working fine. So the maintainer can just approve it after obviously checking everything, and we can just merge it. Now if we see actions, there is a new action that is running. Is it will deploy our application to Docker Hub. It will take a few seconds to deploy our application to Docker Hub. So let's wait for that. Now the pipeline is completed. We can see if it is deployed to Docker Hub or not. As you see that our application is deployed to Docker Hub. So that's how you can automate the process of directly after building your application, you can just deploy it to the respective registry or Kubernetes or any cloud platform. Okay, so now that this pipeline has made your deployment to Docker Hub, if there was no pipeline, you would have done something like this: Docker build -t, your Docker Hub name, and your image container name, image name dot. You would have done something like this, but we don't want to do it manually. I mean, we don't have to do this manually. Uh, we don't have the time to do it manually. So GitOps is all about automating the process and reducing the time and efforts of developers. That's about GitOps using GitHub Actions, and there is so much to explore in this area. You can just modify your YAML files. You can make your YAML files really customized and according to your production environment. And thank you so much for joining my talk.